Grand Admiral Thesick stood on the command bridge of the Imperial warship Eternal Dominion and watched his fleet emerge from faster-than-light travel. 800 warships filled the space around him. Their hulls gleamed with the purple and gold colors of the Dominion Empire. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Together, they formed the largest attack fleet assembled in over 300 years. Thesick allowed himself a moment of pride. He had served the Empire for 60 years. He had conquered 40 worlds and crushed a dozen rebellions. The Emperor himself had chosen him for this mission. Today he would add another victory to his long record. The planet Velar Prime floated before them like a blue and green jewel. It was home to 3 billion souls, mostly members of the Velari species. They were small creatures with large eyes and delicate frames. They had no military tradition and no real weapons. But they had made one terrible mistake. They had accepted human protection. The humans were newcomers to the galaxy. They had arrived only 2 centuries ago, spreading from their home system with surprising speed. They were strange creatures. They looked soft and weak. Their bodies had no natural armor, no claws, no venom. Yet somehow they had carved out a small territory for themselves and had begun accepting refugee species under their protection. The Dominion Empire had tolerated this for long enough. The Emperor had decided that these humans needed to learn their place, and he had sent Thesick to teach them. "Scan complete, Grand Admiral," reported the sensor officer. "I am detecting 40 human vessels in defensive formation around the planet." Thesick felt his mandibles click together in amusement. 40 ships. He had expected at least 100. Perhaps the humans were even weaker than intelligence reports suggested. "What classes are the enemy ships?" he asked. The sensor officer studied his displays for a moment. "They appear to be small vessels, sir. Our database identifies them as human patrol corvettes. They are the smallest combat classification in human naval records." Thesick turned to look at his tactical officer. "Patrol boats? They send patrol boats against an Imperial battle fleet?" The tactical officer, an experienced warrior named Keseth, shook his head slowly. "Perhaps this is all they have in this region, sir. Or perhaps they do not take our threat seriously. Then we shall educate them," Thesick replied. He walked to his command throne and sat down. "Open a channel to the human commander." A moment later, the main display flickered to life. Thesick found himself looking at a human female. She appeared calm, almost bored. She sat in a command chair much smaller than his own, surrounded by human crew members who moved quietly at their stations. "I am Grand Admiral Thesick of the Dominion Empire," he announced. "I command a fleet of 800 warships. You have 40 small boats. I offer you one chance to surrender. Withdraw from the system and abandon these worlds to Imperial control. If you refuse, I will destroy your fleet and take what I want anyway. Choose wisely, human." The human female studied him with strange, flat eyes. Her face showed no fear. She did not even seem concerned. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Frontier Patrol," she said. Her voice was steady and clear. "These worlds are under human protection. We do not abandon those who trust us. Your offer is rejected." Thesick leaned forward. "You cannot win this battle. You are outnumbered 20 to 1. Your ships are small. Ours are mighty. This is simple mathematics." Captain Vasquez smiled slightly. It was a strange expression that Thesick found difficult to read. "Mathematics can be surprising," she said. "You are welcome to test your numbers against ours, Admiral. But I should warn you, we take our patrol duties very seriously." The channel closed. Thesick stared at the blank screen for a moment. The human had not begged. She had not tried to negotiate for time. She had simply refused and smiled as if she knew something he did not. It was irritating. "All ships, attack formation," Thesick commanded. "Destroy those patrol boats, then we shall take the planet." The Imperial fleet moved forward like a great purple wave. 800 ships advanced in perfect formation, their weapons charging with deadly energy. Thesick watched the tiny human ships on his tactical display. They held their position around the planet, showing no sign of retreat. The first Imperial ships entered weapons range and opened fire. Massive energy beams lanced across space toward the human vessels. What happened next would haunt Thesick for the rest of his life. The human ships moved. They moved with a speed and grace that should have been impossible for vessels of any size. They slipped between the energy beams like water flowing around stones, and then they returned fire. The first Imperial cruiser exploded before anyone understood what had happened. Then a second, then a third. "What is happening?" Thesic demanded. He gripped the arms of his throne as the bridge shook from a nearby explosion. "Their weapons," Keseth reported, his voice filled with shock. "Their weapons are cutting through our shields like they do not exist. One shot, one kill. Every time." On the tactical display, Thesic watched his ships dying. The human patrol boats danced through his fleet like predators among prey. They were impossibly fast. Their weapons were impossibly powerful, and their pilots seemed to know exactly where every Imperial ship would be before it got there. "Concentrate fire on the lead vessel," Thesic ordered. "All ships target the human flagship." Hundreds of weapons locked onto a single human ship. They fired as one. The combined energy could have cracked a planet. The human ship was not there. It had moved a fraction of a second before the beams arrived. It appeared behind an Imperial destroyer and fired a single shot. The destroyer vanished in a ball of fire. The battle continued for 3 terrible hours. Thesic threw everything he had at the humans. He tried every tactic he knew. He ordered ramming attacks. He attempted to surround them. Nothing worked. The humans fought like demons from an old nightmare. Their small ships seemed to be everywhere at once. They struck hard and fast, then vanished before return fire could find them. Every shot they fired found its target. Every move they made was perfect. When Captain Vasquez finally ordered her patrol boats to withdraw, Thesic could only watch them go. He did not have enough functioning ships to pursue them. He barely had enough to limp back to Imperial space. The Grand Admiral sat in silence as his officers tallied the losses. 218 Imperial warships destroyed, 347 damaged beyond combat capability. Nearly 50,000 Imperial soldiers dead. The humans had lost 3 ships. "This is impossible," Thesic whispered. "How could patrol boats do this to an Imperial battle fleet?" Keseth approached the command throne. His face was pale beneath his scales. "Grand Admiral, I have been analyzing the enemy ship configurations. I need to show you something." He activated a display screen and brought up an image of a human patrol boat. Next to it, he placed the standard Imperial naval classification chart. "These are the human ships we fought today," Keseth said. "According to human naval records, they are designated as patrol corvettes. This is the smallest combat classification in their military structure." Thesic stared at the image. "The smallest?" "Yes, sir. These ships are used for border patrol and customs enforcement. They are not considered combat vessels by human standards." Keseth's voice trembled slightly. "Sir, I have also analyzed the ship that was directing their formation. We assumed it was their flagship." "It was not?" "No, sir. Our database identifies it as a human supply tender. It is a logistics vessel. It carries food and spare parts. It has no weapons at all." Thesic felt something cold settle in his chest. "Are you telling me that we just lost 200 ships to human supply boats and customs patrol craft?" "Yes, sir." "Then where are their actual warships?" Keseth was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "I do not know, Grand Admiral. Our records contain no information about human military vessels. Every engagement we have on file, every contact report, every sighting, they all involve patrol boats and support craft. We have never seen a human warship." Thesic turned back to the viewport. The stars looked the same as they always had, but somehow the galaxy felt much darker than before. "Get us home," he ordered. "We need to report this to the Emperor." As the battered fleet prepared to retreat, Thesic found himself thinking about Captain Vasquez and her strange smile. She had known something he did not. Now he understood what it was. Those patrol boats had not been fighting for their lives. They had been playing with his fleet. 40 small ships against 800 warships, and they had been playing. The question that haunted him was simple. If those were just their patrol boats, what else did the humans have? He did not want to find out. But he suspected the Empire would not give him a choice. The Imperial Intelligence Center occupied the top 3 floors of a massive tower on the capital world of Thesar Prime. Thousands of analysts worked there every day, sifting through reports from across the galaxy. They tracked enemy movements, monitored communications, and built profiles of every species the Empire might one day conquer. Corveth was one of the youngest analysts in the building. He had graduated at the top of his class and had been assigned to the human desk 6 months ago. It was considered a boring job. The humans were a minor power with a small territory. They were not important enough for senior analysts. At least that was what everyone believed until the reports from Velar Prime arrived. Corveth sat at his workstation and read Grand Admiral Thesic's battle report for the third time. The words did not change, no matter how many times he read them. 200 Imperial warships destroyed by 40 human patrol boats. It seemed impossible. But the evidence was clear. Video recordings from surviving ships showed the battle in perfect detail. Corveth watched the human vessels dance through the Imperial fleet like leaves in the wind. He watched them fire weapons that cut through Imperial shields like they were made of paper. He watched the greatest fleet in 3 centuries get torn apart by ships no bigger than Imperial shuttles. Something was very wrong. Corveth began pulling every piece of information the Empire had ever collected about humans. He requested files from other departments. He dug through old reports that had been forgotten in dusty archives. He stayed at his desk for 3 days, eating only when necessary and sleeping in his chair. What he found changed everything he thought he knew. The humans had arrived in the galaxy approximately 200 standard years ago. They came from a single planet called Earth, located in a small, yellow star system they called Sol. Within 50 years, they had established colonies on dozens of worlds. Within 100 years, they controlled a respectable territory in what had been empty space. The Empire had not paid much attention to them at first. They were far away and seemed peaceful. They traded with their neighbors. They accepted refugees from other species. They built things and explored. They did not conquer. But Corveth found something interesting in the old records. Every species that had ever threatened human territory had suffered devastating defeats. The Krethic horde had attacked a human colony world 80 years ago. They had sent 1,000 ships. None returned. The Void Stalkers, a race of pirates who had terrorized the region for centuries, attempted to raid human shipping lanes. They were wiped out in a single day, and in every case, the humans had fought with patrol boats and support craft. Corveth checked the records again and again. He cross-referenced every database the Empire maintained. The result was always the same. In 200 years of galactic history, no one had ever recorded a human military vessel in combat. Not once. This made no sense. Corveth pulled up economic data next. He calculated human industrial capacity based on the size of their territory and population. He estimated their shipyard output based on the number of vessels they operated. The numbers were clear. The humans should have thousands of capital ships, tens of thousands, maybe more. Where were they? He found a partial answer in an intercepted human communication from 50 years ago. It was a routine logistics report, probably transmitted without encryption because no one thought it was important. The report mentioned something called the Home Fleet stationed at Sol. Home Fleet. The word suggested a defensive force protecting the human home system. But the report also mentioned that Home Fleet was operating at reduced capacity due to a training exercise. Reduced capacity was listed as 9,000 vessels. 9,000 ships in reduced capacity for one star system. Corveth felt his scales go cold. He began searching for more information about human naval organization. Most of what he found was fragmentary. The humans did not broadcast their military secrets, but he pieced together enough to form a picture. The humans divided their military into several branches. The Frontier Patrol handled border security and customs enforcement. They were the ships everyone encountered. They were the ships that had destroyed the Krethic horde and the Void Stalkers. They were the ships that had just humiliated Grand Admiral Thesic. But the Frontier Patrol was just the beginning. Behind them stood the Sector Defense Forces, responsible for protecting human colony worlds. Behind them stood the Core Guard, which defended the 12 original human colonies near Sol. And behind them all stood the Home Fleet, which never left the Sol system. Corveth found references to ship classes he did not recognize. The humans built something called dreadnoughts, vessels apparently designed for heavy combat. They built carriers that launched smaller attack craft. They built something called siege platforms, though he could find no details about what those were. None of these ships had ever been seen in action. None of them had ever left human core territory. The Empire had been dealing with human patrol boats for 2 centuries, and it had assumed those patrol boats represented human military power. The assumption was wrong. Korveth prepared a report and requested a meeting with his superiors. Director Vestic, head of the Human Intelligence Desk, received him in a large office overlooking the city. "I have reviewed your finding," Director Vestic said. "They are interesting but largely speculative. We have no confirmed sightings of these human warships you describe." "That is exactly my point, Director," Korveth replied. "We have never seen them because the humans have never needed to use them. Every threat they have faced was handled by their patrol forces. We are the first enemy to even make them consider a larger response." Director Vestic waved a dismissive claw. "You are reading too much into fragmentary data. These references to home fleet and dreadnoughts could be propaganda. The humans may be exaggerating their strength to discourage attack." "Then how do you explain Valor Prime?" Korveth asked. "How do you explain 40 patrol boats destroying 200 Imperial warships?" "Advanced technology, clever tactics, perhaps some new weapon we have not seen before." The director shrugged. "It was a surprising defeat, but the Grand Admiral underestimated his enemy. The next assault will be different." Korveth leaned forward. "Director, I have calculated human industrial capacity. Based on their population and territory, they should have approximately 40,000 capital-class vessels. We have never seen one. Not one. Where are they?" "Hidden, exaggerated, non-existent." Director Vestic's tone made clear that the conversation was over. "The Empire has decided to mount a second assault. Grand Admiral Thesic will command a larger fleet, 2,000 ships. There will be no room for human tricks this time." Korveth wanted to argue. He wanted to show the director his calculations, his intercepted communications, his careful analysis. But he could see that it would do no good. The Empire had decided. The facts did not matter. "Yes, Director," he said quietly. He gathered his files and left. Back at his workstation, Korveth continued his research. If no one would listen to him, he would at least document everything he found. Perhaps when the second assault failed, someone would finally pay attention. He discovered something new that night. It was a human cultural broadcast, a news program intended for civilian consumption. The anchor was discussing something called Fleet Day, an annual celebration where human citizens could tour naval vessels. The broadcast showed video of the celebration. Human families walked through ships that dwarfed anything Korveth had ever seen. Dreadnoughts the size of small moons. Carriers that could launch thousands of attack craft. Siege platforms bristling with weapons he could not identify. And everywhere human children ran and played and laughed. They treated these massive engines of destruction like amusement parks. They ate snacks and took pictures and complained about the lines. The humans were not hiding their military. They simply did not think about it very much. They built these incredible weapons and then used them for family entertainment once a year. Korveth saved the broadcast to his files. He wrote a summary of everything he had learned. He sent copies to every senior official he could reach. Then he waited for the reports from the second assault. He knew what they would say. He knew no one would believe him until they saw the truth for themselves. The Empire had 800 years of conquest behind it. They had crushed every enemy they had ever faced. They believed they were invincible. The humans were about to teach them otherwise. Korveth looked at the image of a human dreadnought on his screen. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. A perfect machine built for a single purpose. And the humans had thousands of them, sitting in their home system, waiting for a threat worthy of their attention. The Empire was not that threat. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. Korveth wondered if his people would survive long enough to understand that. Grand Admiral Thesic watched the Second Fleet assemble from the observation deck of his new flagship. 2,000 warships filled the space before him, their purple hulls gleaming in the light of a dozen stars. This was the largest military force the Dominion Empire had gathered in 800 years. It represented nearly half of the Empire's total naval strength. The Emperor had been furious after the defeat at Velar Prime. He had summoned Thesic to the throne room and screamed at him for hours. He had threatened execution. He had threatened the destruction of Thesic's entire family line. In the end, he had offered one chance at redemption. Destroy the humans. Crush them so completely that no one in the galaxy would ever question Imperial might again. Thesic intended to do exactly that. He had studied the recordings from the first battle. He had learned everything he could about human tactics. This time, he would not underestimate them. This time, he would use overwhelming force from the beginning. No offers of surrender, no mercy, just annihilation. The target was a human colony called New Helsinki. It was a small world on the edge of human territory, home to about 50 million people. Taking it would prove that human space was vulnerable. It would show the galaxy that patrol boats could not stop a determined Imperial assault. All ships report ready, Grand Admiral, the communications officer announced. Thesic nodded slowly. Begin the jump to New Helsinki. Attack formation upon arrival. We will crush them before they know we are there. The fleet entered faster than light travel as one. The stars stretched and blurred. Thesic felt the familiar sensation of his body being twisted through folded space. Then everything snapped back to normal, and New Helsinki hung before them like a ripe fruit waiting to be picked. Scanning for enemy vessels, the sensor officer reported. A moment later, his voice filled with confusion. Grand Admiral, I am detecting 120 human ships in defensive formation. Thesic felt a cold smile spread across his face. 120? The humans had tripled their forces since Valar Prime. It would not matter. He had 20 times that number. So they learned something from our last encounter, he said. It will not save them. All ships advance and engage. Leave nothing alive. The Imperial fleet surged forward. 2,000 warships opened fire with everything they had. The space between the fleets filled with deadly energy. Thesic watched the tactical display, waiting to see human ships explode. What he saw instead made his blood turn to ice. The human ships were already moving. They had begun their evasive maneuvers before the first Imperial shots were fired. They flowed through the energy beams like ghosts, untouched and untouchable. And then they started shooting back. The first Imperial ship exploded. Then another. Then 10 more. Then 50. No, Thesic whispered. No, this cannot be happening again. But it was happening. The human patrol boats danced through his fleet just as they had at Valar Prime. They were faster than before. Their weapons were more powerful, and there were 3 times as many of them. Thesic had studied their tactics. He had prepared countermoves. None of it mattered. The humans adapted faster than he could respond. Every time he tried something new, they had an answer. Every formation he attempted was broken within minutes. The battle lasted 4 hours. 4 hours of constant carnage, of ships exploding, of crews dying in the cold vacuum of space. Thesic watched his beautiful fleet get torn apart piece by piece. When it was finally over, the numbers told the terrible story. 1,400 Imperial warships destroyed. 400 more damaged beyond repair. The survivors were limping away at best speed, too broken to fight. The humans had lost 11 ships. Thesic sat in his command chair and stared at nothing. 2 assaults, 3,000 ships, against patrol boats, and both times the patrol boats had won. Grand Admiral, the communications officer said quietly, we have intercepted a human transmission. I think you should hear it. Thesic waved a tired claw. Play it. The speakers crackled to life. A human voice filled the bridge, calm and professional. Third Frontier Patrol Group to Sector Command. Engagement complete. Enemy forces have withdrawn. We sustained moderate losses and are requesting resupply before returning to routine border monitoring. Please advise on ammunition allocation for next patrol cycle. The message continued, but Thesic had stopped listening. His mind was caught on a single phrase. Third Frontier Patrol Group. Not a battle fleet, not a defense force. A patrol group. One of many, apparently. The humans had not sent their military to fight him. They had sent the equivalent of border guards on a routine assignment. There is more, Grand Admiral, the communications officer said. His voice was shaking. We intercepted another transmission. It appears to be a status query from Human High Command. Play it! The speakers crackled again. This time the voice was different, older with an air of authority. Sole command to Frontier Operations. Please confirm status of engagement at New Helsinki. Advise if home fleet mobilization is required. A pause. Then another voice replied. Frontier Operations to Sol Command. Negative on home fleet mobilization. Third Patrol Group has contained the situation. Enemy forces withdrawing. Situation normal. Patrol forces adequate for all current threats. The transmission ended. Thesic sat in silence. Home fleet mobilization. The humans had considered bringing their actual military to this fight. They had decided it was not necessary. Their patrol boats were enough. Grand Admiral, Kessis said slowly, if the third patrol group is stationed at New Helsinki, then where are the first and second patrol groups? Thesic turned to look at his tactical officer. The question hung in the air between them. I do not know, Thesic admitted, and I am beginning to realize that we have no idea what we are dealing with. He ordered the fleet to return to Imperial space at maximum speed. There was nothing else to do. 2,000 ships had not been enough. He did not know how many would be enough. He was not sure such a number existed. The journey home took 3 days. Thesic spent most of that time in his quarters, staring at reports and trying to understand what had happened. The humans had treated 2 of the largest military operations in Imperial history as minor incidents. They had responded with patrol boats and supply ships. They had won easily, and they had never once mentioned anything larger than patrol boats. On the second day, his communications officer brought him another intercepted transmission. It was a logistics report from the human patrol group. Thesic read it with growing horror. The report listed standard supplies needed for the next patrol cycle: fuel, ammunition, food, spare parts. Normal things that any military force would need. But at the bottom of the report, there was a note. Recommend increased patrol frequency along Imperial border. Enemy appears to be testing our response capabilities. Patrol forces should be sufficient to discourage further incursions. No need to involve Corps Guard or Home Fleet at this time. Corps Guard, Home Fleet. The humans had multiple layers of military force behind their patrol boats, and they did not think the Dominion Empire was dangerous enough to bother any of them. Thesic put down the report and closed his eyes. He had spent 60 years conquering worlds for the Empire. He had believed he understood war. He had believed he was a master of military strategy. The humans had shown him that he understood nothing. He was not fighting a war. He was not even fighting a battle. He was swatting at patrol boats while the real human military sat at home and waited. Waited for something that actually required their attention. The Dominion Empire was not that something. Thesic wondered if the Emperor would understand. He wondered if anyone would understand until it was too late. The humans were not their enemies. They were barely even aware the Empire existed. They were swatting away Imperial fleets the way a person might brush away an annoying insect. And if the Empire kept pushing, if they kept attacking, eventually the humans might decide to pay attention. When that happened, Thesic knew the Empire would learn what human warships look like. He hoped he would not live to see that day. The Imperial throne room was silent. Emperor Voss IX sat on his ancient seat of power and stared at the officials assembled before him. His scales had gone pale with fury. His claws dug into the arms of his throne hard enough to crack the stone. Grand Admiral Thesic knelt at the base of the steps, his head bowed in shame. Behind him stood the surviving admirals and generals of the broken fleet. None of them dared to meet the Emperor's eyes. Explain this to me, the Emperor said quietly. His voice was soft, but every word carried the weight of death. Explain how the greatest fleet in 800 years was destroyed by patrol boats. No one answered. No one had an answer. 3,000 ships, the Emperor continued, half of our entire navy, gone. And the humans lost what? 14 ships? 15? 14, Your Majesty, Thesic replied, across both engagements. The Emperor closed his eyes. For a moment, Thesic thought he might order executions right there in the throne room. But when the Emperor spoke again, his voice had changed. The fury was still there, but it was mixed with something else, something that might have been fear. Bring me the analyst, he commanded, the one who has been sending reports about human military capacity. I wish to hear what he has to say. Guards left the throne room. A few minutes later, they returned with Corveth. The young analyst walked forward on shaking legs. He had never been inside the Imperial Palace before. He had certainly never expected to stand before the Emperor himself. You are Corveth? The Emperor asked. The one who predicted this disaster? Corveth bowed deeply. I did not predict the specific outcomes, Your Majesty. I simply compiled data about human military capabilities and noted the gaps in our understanding. Then tell me what you know. All of it. Leave nothing out. Corveth took a deep breath. This was his chance to be heard. He only hoped the Emperor was ready to listen. Your Majesty, the Dominion Empire has fundamentally misunderstood humanity. We assumed they were a minor power with limited military strength. We were wrong. He activated a portable display unit and brought up his research. The humans divide their military into multiple layers. The outermost layer is the Frontier Patrol, which handles border security and customs enforcement. These are the ships we have been fighting. They are the smallest and weakest vessels in human service. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. The weakest? Yes, Your Majesty. Behind the Frontier Patrol are the Sector Defense Forces, which protect human colony worlds. Behind them are the Core Guard, which defends the 12 original human colonies near their home system. And behind them all is the Home Fleet. Corvette changed the display to show his calculations. Based on human industrial capacity and population, I estimate they have approximately 40,000 capital-class warships. Most of these are stationed in or near their home system of Sol. They have never been deployed against any external threat. 40,000? The Emperor's voice cracked slightly. That is more than every fleet in the galaxy combined. Yes, Your Majesty, and I believe my estimate may be conservative. Human shipyards operate at levels we cannot match. They have been building warships for 2 centuries with almost no losses. The Emperor turned to look at his military commanders. Did any of you know this? Silence answered him. No one had known. No one had thought to ask. Show me these warships, the Emperor demanded. Show me what we are dealing with. Corveth switched to the next file. It was the Fleet Day broadcast he had discovered weeks ago. Images of human warships filled the display. Vessels so large they made Imperial dreadnoughts look like toys. This is a human dreadnought, Corveth explained. It is approximately 3 times the size of our largest warship. Its primary weapons can destroy a small moon with a single shot. The humans have several thousand of these. He moved to the next image. This is a human carrier. It can launch and support over 2,000 attack craft. Each attack craft is roughly equivalent to our frontline fighters. The humans use them for extended operations and planetary assault support. Another image. And this is something they call a siege platform. I have limited information about these vessels, but intercepted communications suggest they are designed for attacking heavily fortified positions. They may be capable of destroying entire planets. The Emperor stared at the images for a long moment. His scales had gone from pale to gray. He looked like a creature who had just seen his own death. Why have we never seen these ships in combat? He asked. Because no one has ever been a sufficient threat, Your Majesty. Every enemy the humans have faced has been handled by their patrol forces. They have never needed to deploy their actual military. Corveth pulled up one final piece of data. It was an intercepted communication from after the Second Battle. This was transmitted by a human admiral shortly after our fleet withdrew from New Helsinki. He was asking his superiors if the situation required home fleet mobilization. And what was the answer? They said no, Your Majesty. They said patrol forces were adequate. They said there was no need to involve the Core Guard or Home Fleet. The throne room fell silent again. Everyone understood what that meant. The Dominion Empire had thrown its mightiest forces against humanity, and the humans had responded with their smallest. They had not even considered using their real military. The Emperor sat very still for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his voice was calm. What do you recommend, analyst? Corveth had thought about this question for weeks. He had known someone would eventually ask, and he wanted to have the right answer. Immediate peace negotiations, Your Majesty. We cannot win this war. If we continue to attack, eventually the humans will decide we are a genuine threat. When that happens, they will mobilize their actual military. If 40 patrol boats can destroy 200 of our ships, imagine what 40,000 dreadnoughts could do. You suggest we surrender? I suggest we survive, Your Majesty. The humans have shown no interest in conquest. They protect their territory and the species who ask for their help, but they do not expand aggressively. If we offer peace, they will likely accept it. If we continue fighting, we will lose everything. The Emperor looked around the throne room. He saw the fear in his commanders' eyes. He saw the shame on their faces. He saw an empire that had just discovered it was not the greatest power in the galaxy. "Contact the humans," he said finally. "Tell them we wish to negotiate. Tell them we seek peace." It was the hardest order he had ever given. 800 years of conquest, of glory, of total dominance. All of it meant nothing now. The Dominion Empire had met something stronger than itself. Something so strong that it did not even consider the Empire worth fighting. That was the most terrifying part. Not the human weapons or their ships or their impossible victories. It was the casual way they dismissed imperial power. It was the way they treated the greatest military operation in 800 years as a minor border incident. The humans were not at war with the Empire. They were handling a pest control problem, and the Emperor had just realized that he was the pest. The Imperial diplomatic shuttle crossed into human space 3 weeks after the Emperor's order. Ambassador Cresseth, the most experienced diplomat in Imperial service, commanded the mission. He had negotiated treaties with dozens of species. He had ended wars and started others. He believed he understood how power worked. What he found in human space changed everything he thought he knew. The humans met them at the border with a single patrol corvette. It was one of the small ships that had destroyed the Imperial fleet, and seeing it up close made Cresseth feel slightly sick. It was so small, so insignificant looking, and it had proven itself capable of killing Imperial warships by the dozen. "Welcome to Terran space," the human pilot said through the communication system. "Please follow us to Sol System. The diplomatic corps is waiting to receive you." The journey to Sol took 5 days. Cresseth spent most of that time watching through the shuttle's viewports as they passed through human territory. What he saw amazed him. Human worlds were beautiful, green and blue and full of life. Cities sparkled on their surfaces like jewels. Ships moved constantly between them, carrying goods and people and ideas. There was no sign of the military buildup he had expected. No fortresses, no weapons platforms, no fleets of warships patrolling the borders. The humans lived as if they were not at war, as if they had never been at war, as if the Dominion Empire's attack had been so insignificant that it did not even change their daily routines. When they finally reached Sol System, Cresseth understood why. Earth hung before them, a blue marble wrapped in white clouds. It was a beautiful world, similar in many ways to the Imperial homeworld, but that was not what caught Cresseth's attention. The space around Earth was full of ships, thousands of them, tens of thousands. They hung in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of the yellow star. Dreadnoughts the size of mountains, carriers surrounded by swarms of attack craft, strange angular vessels that could only be the siege platforms he had heard about. And this was just what he could see from the approach vector. "The home fleet," the patrol pilot said casually. "They're doing exercises today. Don't worry, they know you're coming. They won't shoot." Cresseth could not respond. He could only stare. The shuttle passed through the formation of warships on its way to Earth. Cresseth tried to count them and gave up after the first 1,000. They just kept going. Row after row after row of vessels, each one large enough to destroy everything the Empire had ever built. And the humans had been using patrol boats against him. The shuttle landed at a facility near a human city called Geneva. Cresseth was greeted by a group of humans in formal clothing. They smiled and shook his hand and treated him with perfect politeness. None of them seemed angry. None of them seemed interested in revenge. "Ambassador Cresseth," said the lead human, a woman with gray hair and kind eyes. "I am Director Chen of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. We're pleased you've come to discuss peace." "Director Chen," Cresseth replied. He had to force the words out. He was still thinking about the ships. "The Empire wishes to end hostilities. We seek a peaceful resolution to this conflict." Director Chen nodded. "We never wanted conflict in the first place. You attacked worlds under our protection. We defended them. That's all this ever was. We understand now that we made a mistake," Cresseth said carefully. "We underestimated your capabilities." "Yes, you did." Director Chen's voice remained pleasant, but there was something harder underneath. "Would you like to see exactly how much you underestimated us? We believe it would help your Emperor understand the situation more clearly." Cresseth hesitated. Part of him did not want to know. Part of him wanted to sign the peace treaty and leave as quickly as possible. But he knew the Emperor would want the information. "Yeah," he said. "Show me everything." They took him on a tour of human military facilities. They showed him shipyards where dreadnoughts were built like toys on an assembly line. They showed him weapons testing ranges where a single cannon destroyed an asteroid belt. They showed him training facilities where human soldiers practiced combat techniques that seemed more like magic than warfare. And everywhere he went, the humans treated it as normal. Workers ate lunch in the shadow of planet-killing weapons. Families picnicked near ships that could crack moons. Children played games while their parents discussed shield harmonics and targeting solutions. The humans were not afraid of their own power. They were not even particularly impressed by it. To them, it was just another part of life. On the second day, they took him to see a weapon test. A single human cruiser, much larger than anything Cresseth had seen in combat, positioned itself in an empty area of the outer solar system. "This is one of our standard ship-mounted cannons," the human officer explained. "Nothing special. Every cruiser and above carries several of them." The cruiser fired once. The target was an asteroid approximately the size of a small moon. It had been placed there specifically for the demonstration. When the beam hit it, the asteroid did not explode. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next moment it was gone, along with two smaller moons that had been orbiting nearby. Cresseth felt his legs go weak. He had to grab a railing to stay upright. "Standard weapon," the officer repeated. "The dreadnoughts carry something bigger." That night, Cresseth contacted Emperor Voss through secure channels. He described everything he had seen. He reported the numbers and the weapons and the casual way the humans discussed their power. "Sign the treaty," the Emperor said. His voice sounded hollow. "Defeated. Give them whatever they want." "They do not want much, Your Majesty. They simply want us to stop attacking worlds under their protection. They have no interest in our territory." There was a long pause. "They could take everything we have," the Emperor said finally. "They could destroy our entire empire in a day. Why do they not?" Cresseth had asked Director Chen the same question. The answer had surprised him. "They said they do not believe in conquest, Your Majesty. They protect what is theirs and what they have promised to protect. They do not take what belongs to others." "How strange," the Emperor murmured. "How very strange." The treaty was signed the next day. It was simple and straightforward. The Dominion Empire agreed to never attack human territory or human-protected worlds. In exchange, the humans agreed to maintain normal diplomatic and trade relations. There was no punishment, no demands for compensation, no humiliation beyond what the Empire had inflicted upon itself. The humans simply wanted peace, and now they had it. As Cresseth's shuttle prepared to leave Sol System, he took one last look at the home fleet. It hung there in the darkness, silent and patient and utterly terrifying. "Admiral," he asked the patrol pilot who was escorting them out, "may I ask a question?" "Sure." "Your fleet destroyed 3,000 of our ships using only patrol boats. You never deployed anything larger. Why? Why not simply crush us with your dreadnoughts and end the war in a single day?" The pilot was quiet for a moment. Then she shrugged. "Overkill," she said simply. "Patrol boats were enough to do the job. Why waste resources on something bigger? We solve problems with the minimum necessary force. It's more efficient." Cresseth thought about that for a long time. The Dominion Empire had attacked humanity with everything it had. It had thrown its greatest fleets against human space. It had used weapons that could destroy worlds. It had been ready to commit genocide to win. And the humans had responded with approximately 1% of their available military power. They had considered that to be enough. They had been right. Years later, analyst Korvath published his complete study of human military capabilities. It became required reading in every military academy across the galaxy. Its conclusion haunted soldiers and politicians for generations. Human military doctrine, Korvath wrote, is built on a simple principle. They call it proportional response. They use exactly as much force as necessary to achieve their objectives, and no more. The Dominion Empire attacked humanity with 3,000 warships. Humanity responded with patrol boats because patrol boats were sufficient. If we had been a greater threat, they would have used greater force. If we had threatened their existence, they would have deployed their full military. We were never that threat. We were barely an inconvenience. And that, Korvath concluded, is what makes them truly terrifying. Not their weapons, not their numbers, not their technology. It is the fact that they looked at the greatest military power in 800 years and decided we were not worth their attention. They fought us with their Coast Guard and thought it was overkill. The galaxy took notice. No one ever attacked human space again. And somewhere in the Sol system, the home fleet continued its endless exercises, waiting for an enemy that might someday deserve its attention. That enemy never came.